Section 18 of The Art of Cookery Made Plain and Easy by Hannah Glasse. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 8 of Pies. To make a very fine sweet lamb or veal pie. Season your lamb with salt and pepper, cloves, mace and nutmeg, all beat fine to your palate. Cut your lamb or veal into little pieces. Make a good puff paste crust. Lay it into your dish, then lay in your meat. Strew on it some stoned raisins and currants, clean washed, and some sugar. Then lay on it some forcemeat balls made sweet, and in the summer some artichoke bottoms boiled, and scalded grapes in the winter. Boil Spanish potatoes cut in pieces, candied citron, candied orange and lemon peel, and 3 or 4 blades of mace. Put butter on the top, close up your pie and bake it. Have ready against it comes out of the oven a caudle made thus. Take a pint of white wine and mix in the yolks of 3 eggs. Stir it well together over the fire, one way all the time, till it is thick. Then take it off, stir in sugar enough to sweeten it, and squeeze in the juice of a lemon. Pour it hot into your pie and close it up again. Send it hot to table. A savoury veal pie. Take a breast of veal, cut it into pieces, season it with pepper and salt. Lay it all into your crust, boil 6 or 8 eggs hard, take only the yolks, put them into the pie here and there, fill your dish almost full of water, put on the lid and bake it well, or you may put some forcemeat balls in. To make a savoury lamb or veal pie. Make a good puff paste crust, cut your meat into pieces, season it to your palate with pepper, salt, mace, cloves and nutmeg finely beat. Lay it into your crust with a few lambstones and sweetbreads seasoned as your meat. Also some oysters and forcemeat balls, hard yolks of eggs, and the tops of asparagus 2 inches long, first boiled green. Put butter all over the pie, put on the lid and set it in a quick oven an hour and a half, and then have ready the liquor, made thus. Take a pint of gravy, the oyster liquor, a gill of red wine, and a little grated nutmeg. Mix all together with the yolks of 2 or 3 eggs beat, and keep it stirring one way all the time. When it boils, pour it into your pie. Put on the lid again. Send it hot to table. You must make liquor according to your pie. To make a calf's foot pie. First set your calf's feet on in a saucepan in 3 quarts of water with 3 or 4 blades of mace. Let them boil softly till there is about 1.5 pints. Then take out your feet, strain the liquor, and make a good crust. Cover your dish, then pick off the flesh from the bones, lay half in the dish, strew half a pound of currants clean washed and picked over, and half a pound of raisins stoned. Lay on the rest of the meat, then skim the liquor, sweeten it to the palate, and put in half a pint of white wine. Pour it into the dish, put on your lid, and bake it an hour and a half. To make an olive pie. Make your crust ready, then take the thin collops of the best end of a leg of veal, as many as you think will fill your pie. Hack them with the back of a knife and season them with salt, pepper, cloves and mace. Wash over your collops with a bunch of feathers dipped in eggs, and have in readiness a good handful of sweet herbs shred small. The herbs must be thyme, parsley and spinach, the yolks of 8 hard eggs minced, and a few oysters parboiled and chopped, some beef suet shred very fine. Mix these together and strew them over your collops, then sprinkle a little orange flower water over them, roll the collops up very close, and lay them in your pie, strewing the seasoning over what is left. Put butter on the top, and close your pie. When it comes out of the oven, have ready some gravy hot, with 1 anchovy dissolved in the gravy. Pour it in boiling hot. You may put in artichoke bottoms and chestnuts if you please. You may leave out the orange flower water if you do not like it. To season an egg pie. Boil 12 eggs hard, and shred them with 1 pound of beef suet or marrow shred fine. Season them with a little cinnamon and nutmeg beat fine, 1 pound of currants clean washed and picked, 2 or 3 spoonfuls of cream, and a little sack and rosewater mixed all together, and fill the pie. When it is baked, stir in ½ pound of fresh butter and the juice of a lemon. To make a mutton pie. Take a loin of mutton, take off the skin and fat of the inside, cut it into steaks, season it well with pepper and salt to your palate. Lay it into your crust, fill it, pour in as much water as will almost fill the dish, then put on the crust and bake it well. A beefsteak pie. Take fine rump steaks, beat them with a rolling pin, then season them with pepper and salt according to your palate. Make a good crust, lay in your steaks, fill your dish, then pour in as much water as will half fill the dish. Put on the crust and bake it well. A ham pie. Take some cold boiled ham and slice it about ½ inch thick. Make a good crust and thick over the dish and lay a layer of ham, shake a little pepper over it, then take a large young fowl clean picked, gutted, washed and singed. Put a little pepper and salt in the belly and rub a very little salt on the outside. Lay the fowl on the ham, boil some eggs hard, put in the yolks and cover all with ham, then shake some pepper on the ham and put on the top crust. Bake it well. Have ready when it comes out of the oven some very rich beef gravy, enough to fill the pie. Lay on the crust again and send it to table hot. If you put 2 large fowls in, they will make a fine pie, but that is according to your company, more or less. The larger the pie, the finer the meat eats. The crust must be the same you make for a venison pasty. You should pour a little strong gravy into the pie when you make it, just to bake the meat, and then fill it up when it comes out of the oven. Boil some truffles and morels and put into the pie, which is a great addition, and some fresh mushrooms or dried ones. To make a pigeon pie. Make a puff paste crust, cover your dish, let your pigeons be very nicely picked and cleaned, season them with pepper and salt, and put a good piece of fine fresh butter with pepper and salt in their bellies. Lay them in your pan, the necks, gizzards, livers, pinions and hearts lay between, with the yolk of a hard egg and beefsteak in the middle. Put as much water as will almost fill the dish. Lay on the top crust and bake it well. This is the best way to make pigeon pie, but the French fill the pigeons with a very high forcemeat, and lay forcemeat balls round the inside, with asparagus tops, artichoke bottoms, mushrooms, truffles and morels, and season high. But that is according to different palates. To make a giblet pie. Take 2 pairs of giblets, nicely cleaned. Put all but the livers into a saucepan with 2 quarts of water, 20 corns of whole pepper, 3 blades of mace, a bundle of sweet herbs and a large onion. Cover them close and let them stew very softly till they are quite tender. Then have a good crust ready, cover your dish, lay a fine rump steak at the bottom, seasoned with pepper and salt. Then lay in your giblets with the livers and strain the liquor they were stewed in. Season it with salt and pour into your pie. Put on the lid and bake it an hour and a half. To make a duck pie. Make a puff paste crust, take 2 ducks, scald them, and make them very clean. Cut off the feet, the pinions, the neck and head, all clean picked and scalded, with the gizzards, livers, and hearts. Pick out all the fat of the inside. Lay a crust all over the dish. Season the ducks with pepper and salt, inside and out. Lay them in your dish, and the giblets at each end seasoned. Put in as much water as will almost fill the pie. Lay on the crust and bake it, but not too much. To make a chicken pie. Make a puff paste crust. Take 2 chickens, cut them to pieces, season them with pepper and salt, a little beaten mace. Lay a forcemeat made thus round the side of the dish. Take half a pound of veal, half a pound of suet, beat them quite fine in a marble mortar with as many crumbs of bread. Season it with a very little pepper and salt, an anchovy with the liquor, cut the anchovy to pieces, a little lemon peel cut very fine and shred small, a very little thyme, mix all together with the yolk of an egg. Make some into round balls, about 12, the rest lay round the dish. Lay in 1 chicken over the bottom of the dish, take 2 sweetbreads, cut them into 5 or 6 pieces, lay them all over, season them with pepper and salt, strew over them half an ounce of truffles and morels, 2 or 3 artichoke bottoms cut to pieces, a few coxcombs if you have them, a palate boiled tender and cut to pieces. Then lay on the other part of the chicken, put half a pint of water in and cover the pie. Bake it well, and when it comes out of the oven, fill it with good gravy, lay it on the crust and send it to table. To make a Cheshire pork pie. Take a loin of pork, skin it, cut it into steaks, season it with salt, nutmeg and pepper. Make a good crust, lay a layer of pork, then a large layer of pippins pared and cored, a little sugar, enough to sweeten the pie, then another layer of pork. Put in half a pint of white wine, lay some butter on the top and close your pie. If your pie be large, it will take a pint of white wine. To make a Devonshire Squab Pie. Make a good crust, cover the dish all over. Put at the bottom a layer of sliced pippins, then a layer of mutton steaks cut from the loin, well seasoned with pepper and salt. Then another layer of pippins. Peel some onions and slice them thin. Lay a layer all over the apples, then a layer of mutton, then pippins and onions. Pour in a pint of water. So close your pie and bake it. To make an ox cheek pie. First bake your ox cheek as at other times, but not too much. Put it in the oven overnight, and then it will be ready the next day. Make a fine puff paste crust, and let your side and top crust be thick. Let your dish be deep to hold a good deal of gravy. Cover your dish with crust, then cut off all the flesh, kernels and fat of the head, with the palate cut in pieces. Cut the meat into little pieces as you do for a hash. Lay in the meat, take an ounce of truffles and morels and throw them over the meat. The yolks of 6 eggs boiled hard, a gill of pickled mushrooms, or fresh ones are better if you have them. Put in a good many forcemeat balls, a few artichoke bottoms and asparagus tops, if you have any. Season your pie with pepper and salt to your palate, and fill the pie with the gravy it was baked in. If the head be rightly seasoned when it comes out of the oven, it will want very little more. Put on the lid and bake it. When the crust is done, your pie will be enough. To make a Shropshire Pie. First make a good puff paste crust, then cut 2 rabbits to pieces with 2 pounds of fat pork cut into little pieces. Season both with pepper and salt to your liking, then cover your dish with crust and lay in your rabbits. Mix the pork with them, Take the livers of the rabbits, parboil them, and beat them in a mortar with as much fat bacon, a little sweet herbs, and some oysters if you have them. Season with pepper, salt, and nutmeg. Mix it up with the yolk of an egg, and make it into balls. Lay them here and there in your pie, some artichoke bottoms cut in dice, and coxcombs if you have them. Grate a small nutmeg over the meat, then pour in half a pint of red wine and half a pint of water. Close your pie and bake it an hour and a half in a quick oven, but not too fierce an oven. To make a Yorkshire Christmas pie. First make a good standing crust. Let the wall and bottom be very thick. Bone a turkey, a goose, a fowl, a partridge, and a pigeon. Season them all very well. Take half an ounce of mace, half an ounce of nutmegs, a quarter of an ounce of cloves, and half an ounce of black pepper, all beat fine together, 2 large spoonfuls of salt, and then mix them together. Open the fowls all down the back, and bone them. First the pigeon, then the partridge. Cover them, then the fowl, then the goose, and then the turkey, which must be large. Season them all well first, and lay them in the crust, so as it will look only like a whole turkey. Then have a hare ready cased and wiped with a clean cloth. Cut it to pieces, that is, joint it. Season it, and lay it as close as you can on one side. On the other side, woodcocks, moor game, and what sort of wild fowl you can get. Season them well and lay them close. Put at least 4 pounds of butter into the pie, then lay on your lid, which must be a very thick one, and let it be well baked. It must have a very hot oven, and will take at least 4 hours. This crust will take a bushel of flour. In this chapter you will see how to make it. These pies are often sent to London in a box as presents. Therefore, the walls must be well built. To make a goose pie. Half a peck of flour will make the walls of a goose pie, made as in the receipts for crust. Raise your crust just big enough to hold a large goose. First have a pickled dried tongue boiled tender enough to peel, cut off the root, bone a goose and a large fowl. Take half a quarter of an ounce of mace beat fine, a large teaspoonful of beaten pepper, 3 teaspoonfuls of salt. Mix all together, season your fowl and goose with it. Then lay the fowl in the goose, and tongue in the fowl, and the goose in the same form as if whole. Put half a pound of butter on the top, and lay on the lid. This pie is delicious, either hot or cold, and will keep a great while. A slice of this pie cut down across makes a pretty little side dish for supper. To make a venison pasty. Take a neck and breast of venison, bone it, season it with pepper and salt according to your palate. Cut the breast in 2 or 3 pieces, but do not cut the fat off the neck if you can help it. Lay in the breast and neck end first, and the best end of the neck on the top, that the fat may be whole. Make a good rich puff paste crust, and rim your dish. Then lay in your venison, put in half a pound of butter, about a quarter of a pint of water, then put a very thick paste over, and ornament it in any form you please, with leaves, etc., cut in paste, and let it be baked 3 hours in a quick oven. Put a sheet of buttered paper over it to keep it from scorching. In the meantime, set on the bones of the venison in 2 quarts of water, with 2 or 3 blades of mace, an onion, a little piece of crust baked crisp and brown, a little whole pepper. Cover it close and let it boil softly over a slow fire till above half is wasted, then strain it off. When the pasty comes out of the oven, lift up the lid and pour in the gravy. When your venison is not fat enough, take the fat of a loin of mutton steeped in a little rape vinegar and red wine 24 hours. Then lay it on the top of the venison and close your pasty. It is a wrong notion of some people to think venison cannot be baked enough, and will first bake it in a false crust and then bake it in the pasty. By this time the fine flavour of the venison is gone. No, if you want it to be very tender, wash it in warm milk and water, dry it in clean cloths till it is very dry, then rub it all over with vinegar and hang it in the air. Keep it as long as you think proper. It will keep thus a fortnight good. But be sure there be no moistness about it. If there is, you must dry it well and throw ginger over it, and it will keep a long time. When you use it, just dip it in lukewarm water and dry it. Bake it in a quick oven. If it is a large pasty, it will take 3 hours. Then your venison will be tender and have all the fine flavour. The shoulder makes a pretty pasty, boned and made as above with the mutton fat. A loin of mutton makes a fine pasty. Take a large fat loin of mutton, let it hang 4 or 5 days, then bone it, leaving the meat as whole as you can. Lay the meat 24 hours in half a pint of red wine and half a pint of rape vinegar. Then take it out of the pickle and order it as you do a pasty, and boil the bones in the same manner to fill the pasty when it comes out of the oven. To make a Carves Head Pie. Cleanse your head very well and boil it till it is tender. Then carefully take off the flesh as whole as you can, take out the eyes and slice the tongue. Make a good puff paste crust, cover the dish, lay on your meat, throw over it the tongue, lay the eyes cut in 2 at each corner. Season it with a very little pepper and salt. Pour in half a pint of the liquor it was boiled in. Lay a thin top crust on and bake it an hour in a quick oven. In the meantime, boil the bones of the head in 2 quarts of liquor with 2 or 3 blades of mace, half a quarter of an ounce of whole pepper, a large onion, and a bundle of sweet herbs. Let it boil till there is about a pint, then strain it off and add 2 spoonfuls of ketchup, 3 of red wine, a piece of butter as big as a walnut rolled in flour, half an ounce of truffles and morels. Season with salt to your palate. Boil it and have half the brains boiled with some sage. Beat them and 12 leaves of sage chopped fine. Stir all together and give it a boil. Take the other part of the brains and beat them with some of the sage chopped fine, a little lemon peel minced fine, and half a small nutmeg grated. Beat it up with an egg and fry it in little cakes of a fine light brown. Boil 6 eggs hard, take only the yolks. When your pie comes out of the oven, take off the lid, lay the eggs and cakes over it, and pour the sauce all over. Send it to table hot without the lid. This is a fine dish. You may put in it as many fine things as you please, but it wants no more addition. To make a torte. First make a fine puff paste. Cover your dish with the crust. Make a good forcemeat, thus. Take a pound of veal and a pound of beef suet, cut them small and beat them fine in a mortar. Season it with a small nutmeg grated, a little lemon peel shred fine, a few sweet herbs, not too much, a little pepper and salt, just enough to season it, the crumb of a penny loaf, rubbed fine. Mix it up with the yolk of an egg. Make 1/3 into balls, and the rest lay round the sides of the dish. Get 2 fine large veal sweetbreads, cut each into 4 pieces. 2 pair of lambstones, each cut in 2, 12 coxcombs, half an ounce of truffles and morels, 4 artichoke bottoms, cut each into 4 pieces, a few asparagus tops, some fresh mushrooms and some pickled. Put all together in your dish. Lay first your sweetbreads, then the artichoke bottoms, then the coxcombs, then the truffles and morels, then the asparagus, then the mushrooms, and then the forcemeat balls. Season the sweetbreads with pepper and salt. Fill your pie with water and put on the crust. Bake it 2 hours. As to the fruit and fish pies, you have them in the chapter for Lent. To make mince pies the best way. Take 3 pounds of suet shred very fine and chopped as small as possible. 2 pounds of raisins stoned and chopped as fine as possible. 2 pounds of currants nicely picked, washed, rubbed and dried at the fire. Half a hundred of fine pippins, pared, cored and chopped small. Half a pound of fine sugar pounded fine. 1/4 ounce of mace, 1/4 ounce of cloves, 2 large nutmegs, all beat fine. Put all together into a great pan and mix it well together with half a pint of brandy and half a pint of sack. Put it down close in a stone pot, and it will keep good 4 months. When you make your pies, take a little dish, something bigger than a soup plate, lay a very thin crust all over it, lay a thin layer of meat, and then a thin layer of citron cut very thin, then a layer of mincemeat, and a layer of orange peel cut thin, over that a little meat, squeeze half the juice of a fine Seville orange or lemon, lay on your crust and bake it nicely. These pies eat finely cold. If you make them in little patties, mix your meat and sweetmeats accordingly. If you choose meat in your pies, parboil neat's tongue, peel it, and chop the meat as fine as possible, and mix with the rest. Or 2 pounds of the inside of a sirloin of beef boiled. But you must double the quantity of fruit when you use meat. Torte Des Moines. Make puff paste and lay round your dish, then a layer of biscuit and a layer of butter and marrow, and then a layer of all sorts of sweetmeats, or as many as you have, and so do till your dish is full. Then boil a quart of cream and thicken it with 4 eggs and a spoonful of orange flower water. Sweeten it with sugar to your palate, and pour over the rest. Half an hour will bake it. To make orange or lemon tarts. Take 6 large lemons and rub them very well with salt, and put them in water for 2 days with a handful of salt in it. Then change them into fresh water every day, without salt, for a fortnight. Then boil them for 2 or 3 hours till they are tender. Then cut them into half quarters, and then cut them 3-corner ways, as thin as you can. Take 6 pippins pared, cored and quartered, and a pint of fair water. Let them boil till the pippins break. Put the liquor to your orange or lemon, and half the pulp of the pippins well broken, and a pound of sugar. Boil these together 1/4 hour, then put it in a gallipot, and squeeze an orange in it. If it be a lemon tart, squeeze a lemon. 2 spoonfuls is enough for a tart. Your patty pans must be small and shallow. Put fine puff paste, and very thin. A little while will bake it. Just as your tarts are going into the oven, with a feather or brush, do them over with melted butter, and then sift double refined sugar over them, and this is a pretty icing on them. To make different sorts of tarts. If you bake in tin patties, butter them, and you must put a little crust all over, because of the taking them out. If in china or glass, no crust but the top one. Lay fine sugar at the bottom, then your plums, cherries, or any other sort of fruit, and sugar at top. Then put on your lid and bake them in a slack oven. Mince pies must be baked in tin patties, because taking them out, the puff paste is best for them. For sweet tarts, the beaten crust is best, but as you fancy. You have the receipt for the crust in this chapter. Apple, pear, apricot, etc. make thus. Apples and pears, pare them, cut them into quarters, and core them. Cut the quarters across again. Set them on a saucepan with just as much water as will barely cover them. Let them simmer on a slow fire just till the fruit is tender. Put a good piece of lemon peel in the water with the fruit, then have your patties ready. Lay fine sugar at bottom, then your fruit, and a little sugar at top. That you must put in at your discretion. Pour over each tart a teaspoonful of lemon juice and 3 teaspoonfuls of the liquor they were boiled in. Put on your lid and bake them in a slack oven. Apricots do the same way, only do not use lemon. As to preserved tarts, only lay in your preserved fruit and put a very thin crust at top, and let them be baked as little as possible. But if you would make them very nice, have a large patty, the size you would have for your tart. Make your sugar crust, roll it as thick as a halfpenny, then butter your patties and cover it. Shape your upper crust on a hollow thing on purpose, the size of your patty, and mark it with a marking iron for that purpose, in what shape you please, to be hollow and open to see the fruit through. Then bake your crust in a very slack oven, not to discolour it, but to have it crisp. When the crust is cold, very carefully take it out and fill it with what fruit you please. Lay on the lid and it is done. Therefore, if the tart is not eat, your sweetmeat is not the worse and it looks genteel. Paste for tarts. 1 pound of flour, 3/4 of a pound of butter, mix up together and beat well with a rolling pin. Another paste for tarts. 1/2 pound of butter, 1/2 pound of flour, and 1/2 pound of sugar. Mix it well together and beat it with a rolling pin well, then roll it out thin. Puff paste. Take 1/4 of a peck of flour, rub in a pound of butter very fine, make it up in a light paste with cold water, just stiff enough to work it up, then roll it out about as thick as a crown piece. Put a layer of butter all over, sprinkle on a little flour, double it up and roll it out again, double it and roll it 3 times. Then it is fit for all sorts of pies and tarts that require a puff paste. A good crust for great pies. To a peck of flour, add the yolks of 3 eggs, then boil some water, and put in 1/2 pound of fried suet, and 1.5 pounds of butter. Skim off the butter and suet, and as much of the liquor as will make it a light, good crust. Work it up well, and roll it out. A standing crust for great pies. Take a peck of flour and 6 pounds of butter boiled in a gallon of water. Skim it off into the flour and as little of the liquor as you can. Work it well up into a paste, then pull it into pieces till it is cold. Then make it up in what form you will have it. This is fit for the walls of a goose pie. A cold crust. To 3 pounds of flour, rub in 1.5 pounds of butter, break in 2 eggs, and make it up with cold water. A dripping crust. Take 1.5 pounds of beef dripping, boil it in water, strain it, then let it stand to be cold, and take off the hard fat. Scrape it, boil it so 4 or 5 times, then work it well up into 3 pounds of flour as fine as you can, and make it up into paste with cold water. It makes a very fine crust. A crust for custards. Take 1/2 pound of flour, 6 ounces of butter, the yolks of 2 eggs, 3 spoonfuls of cream. Mix them together and let them stand 1/4 of an hour, then work it up and down and roll it very thin. Paste for a crackling crust. Blanch 4 handfuls of almonds and throw them into water, then dry them in a cloth and pound them in a mortar very fine with a little orange flower water and the white of an egg. When they are well pounded, pass them through a coarse hair sieve to clear them from all the lumps or clods. Then spread it on a dish till it is very pliable. Let it stand for a while, then roll out a piece for the undercrust and dry it in the oven on the pie pan, while other pastry works are making, as knots, ciphers, etc., for garnishing your pies. End of section 18.